Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to our LinkedIn Live learning session for April. This topic for today is one that I've been teaching for over a decade now, and it is about three layers of diversity. I first was introduced to this particular diversity model in about 2010 when I started teaching at one of the universities that I was working at in the past. And this was part of our public speaking curriculum, and it was important to learn about analyzing the audience. So we had to give some kind of framework, of course, for students to think about how do you figure out who's sitting in your audience to be able to construct a message. Hey, Chi Chi, good to see you. Before I get into that topic for today, for those who are joining that have joined in the past, like Chi Chi, good to see you again. I'll do a brief introduction. Sorry, it's a little repetitive, but we always get new people joining. So I want to give you a little bit about my background. And as someone who teaches public speaking, it's important to build credibility. I know this because we talk about it in classes. So let me do that for you for a few moments. My name is Gino Parati. Last name is pronounced like karate with a P, Gino Parati, and I'm a communication expert. So I largely work in two domains, academia and then with individuals and organizations. So some of the academic credentials that I have in the past, I've taught for University of Central Florida, Columbia University, the Fashion Institute of Technology, and Baruch College. And I've taught public speaking at all four of these schools. But it's so much more than just public speaking. It's also about the field of communication. And ultimately, communication is a combination of psychology, anthropology, and sociology. So my background is really about studying the human being. And when we show up in relationships, when we show up in one-on-ones, group, or even national situations, how does this thing called communication impact the way that we experience our identities, but also the way we live our lives? It's really interesting stuff. So those are always the type of things that I talk about. They are tied to this area of communication and often related to public speaking, since that's what I really become hyper focused on here for LinkedIn. I represent, when I do this work, my own company called Right Brain Journeys, which is dedicated to helping people learn how to communicate consciously and with confidence. Because I know from personal experience that when we wake up to an understanding of who we are, and today's topic, three layers of diversity, will help us with that. When we become conscious and wake up to who we are, we begin to realize that a lot of stuff has been pre-programmed for us by the cultures in which we were raised. Not that that's innately a good or a bad thing. Let's suspend judgment there for a moment, but just realize what it is that we come with pre-programming. So when we become conscious, we then can make choices which better serve us in the moment. And here's the fun part, especially for business, since LinkedIn is so professionally oriented, it allows us to make strategic decisions to align ourselves with the goals that we would like to accomplish. So that, of course, is the importance of consciousness. I always have notes for those who have joined before. You see me look over every now and then. I always stress eye contact, which is important for about 2 to 3 seconds before you look away. But you do see me looking over for notes. The format for today is the same in the past. If you're joining for the first time, we do about 20 minutes of a learning session here. So I will quickly get into the information in just a moment. We have a chat available, so you can type in the chat at any moment. I encourage you to go ahead and actually do that now. Chi Chi got us started off. You can type where you're joining from. Today, I am broadcasting from my home studio in New York City area. And welcome to people. We get people joining from all around the world. So welcome to everyone. The final 10 minutes I'll reserve if anyone has some specific detailed questions. If they're faster, easy to answer questions, I may just answer them in the moment as I see them pop up live. Hi, Hilla. Nice to have you join today. So that's the format, 20 minutes of a lesson, and potentially we'll reserve up to 10 minutes after that for Q&A for any more in-depth questions. The topic is the three layers of diversity. So in the very beginning, I introduced that I first saw this model in a public speaking textbook. Oh, wonderful, Hilla. Good. And hey, Gabby, good to see you. Wonderful. See, international. London, Israel, Atlanta, all in the house. Fantastic. And we got New York. That's the beauty of online learning. But I first saw this model in a textbook that I was, oh, wonderful, Hong Kong, exciting. I'll get into the lesson. I get so excited with everyone joining that I get taken off track here. But I first saw this in a textbook in 2010, and it was arranged in a pyramid format. And it talked about having a foundation of diversity being cultural, and then the next level was demographic, and then the level on top was individual. So I'll type that in the chat here. Cultural was the foundation. Of course, I'll explain these in more detail. Cultural, demographic, and individual. Oh, it's not letting me type. Anyway, those are the three. So it was very interesting, but I didn't like the pyramid format. The pyramid format I found was not very descriptive for who we are as individuals. Is very hierarchical. It's very structural. So it was almost using a metaphor of a building, of a structure, but we're human beings. So I call it the avocado model, and I used the same three, but I've arranged it into three layers. So on the outside, we have the idea of cultural diversity. And then on the middle, we have demographic. And then at the center, the core of who we are as human beings becomes individual diversity. Why is this model important? It's one of many diversity models. And these, thank you, Chi Chi, for doing that. Appreciate it. There are many different diversity models out there. This one I really like because it's presenting the idea of understanding, of communicating both, understanding ourselves both from the outside in, which means that we know from my field of communication that part of who we are, or at least how we think of ourselves, is created by other people telling us who we are. So we see ourselves reflected through their eyes. Other people act like a mirror and reflect an image of who we are to us. So that is coming from the outside in. But we also know that there's a part of our identity that goes the other way, that we get to tell people who we are. We get to avow our identity, and that's coming from the inside out. So this idea of having culture on the outside, demographics in the middle, individual diversity in the very center really visually helps us to see both that outside in and then inside out form of identity and communication. So the purpose, this is really detailed stuff. The purpose of this brief learning lesson is to get you familiar with these three layers. Next, I'm going to go into each of those and just tell you a few of the categories. But then ultimately, when I reshare the recording of the video from today, I have about a 17-minute learning video module that's free on YouTube. And it goes into in depth with illustrations and visuals in depth about what each of these are. So I highly encourage you to watch that. If you work for an organization or a college, feel free to use that, embed it in your curriculum, share it with your colleagues, with your students, discuss it. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional ideas. This is just a taste of this model. So the first one, cultural diversity on the outside. I call this the avocado model of diversity because an avocado, when you cut it open, has three distinct, easy to see layers. Has the skin on the outside, has the green guacamole flesh in the middle, and then it has the pit, the core of the avocado in the very, very center. Thank you, Chi Chi. Appreciate it. Those three layers are going to help us understand these important aspects of identity. So culture is like that skin of the avocado. It's on the very outside. So on the outside of this, we are getting an understanding of the fact that we have a lot in common with people from our same cultures. And cultures can go big in terms of, if you want to say Western culture and Eastern culture, we can go as large as that. Or we can go very hyper focused and we can say even family cultures. And those of you who are in relationships, those of you who are engaged, married, living with someone else, you know that you're have different families, right? Even if you're from the same country, the same religious culture, your families raise you in a different way. So when you bring two adults from different families together, you have a different life experience and you realize that that cultural experience is not the same. So that's on the outside. When you know what culture someone is from, a quick example would be I was born and raised in the United States. I am living in New York City now. Columbia University is one of the places I have taught. At Columbia, we had a large number of students joining our master's program directly from China. So we received training from the university that was very interesting about eye contact differences. And in the Western classroom in the United States, we very much expect and want eye contact. It's how we assess learning from students. It's how we can see feedback. Do they understand it? Do they need me to explain it another way? Do they have a question, but they're not raising their hand? We also see it as a sign of respect that when you listen, you look with your eyes. You listen with your ears, but you listen with your eyes. So, as a teacher in the Western classroom, we expect eye contact, we want it, and we encourage it. What we were taught from Colombia was that in China, it's different with eye contact. And because of the power difference or the status between the respect for the teacher versus the student, that students often will not make direct eye contact. And that becomes a very interesting cultural difference, right? So that's what I mean. On the outside, we may look similar, not just visually, but in our mannerisms, using that eye contact example. And then we understand, I'm making eye contact because from the West, it's a sign of respect. And then if you're coming from China, I'm not making eye contact as a sign of respect to my teacher. So we get people who are culturally similar to us. So that's the outer layer. The next layer, which would be if you're using the avocado to help you visualize this, is the guacamole flesh area. And demographics become interesting because this is the area that marketing really likes to play up on. Demographics are things like age, race, sexual orientation, religion. They put us in a category where we may have similar life experiences with these people. And marketing, it can be helpful because at different life stages, we may need, or better marketers would love that I said the word need. We would benefit from. We would benefit from the use of certain products. For example, when we're teenagers, we often have a lot of production of oil in our skin. So using products that help remove some of that oil can be helpful. And then as we get older, it puts us in the new age demographic. Our skin doesn't produce as much oil and we may end up with dry skin. So it could be helpful to have a product that helps put that moisture back. So when you understand that certain demographics can put you in similar life experiences as one another, then you get to speak to, understand these people a little bit better. This can also help you connect, though, with people who are in a different age category or any demographic category because they are in a different demographic. So why would we expect that their life experience would be the same as mine? If they're different demographically, then it would make sense that they may have a different life experience. And that gives us the opportunity to listen to the life experience and to analyze it, to accept it, to compare it to our own, to contrast it to our own. And I often say that those who are different from me are my greatest teachers. Because if you're around people who are always the same, you're not ever being exposed to anything new or contrasting to highlight for you what you know, what you understand, and oftentimes what you don't know and what you don't understand. So demographics put us into similar life categories, but it can also really segment us from a lot of other people. This brings us to the very middle. In the middle is individual diversity. And at this very core level, at the center of the avocado, using that as the metaphor, is going to be values, beliefs, and attitudes, just to name a few. The full list will be on that video replay for that YouTube video that I have for you. But at the core level, it's about values, attitudes, beliefs. And when you have this understanding, this is a much more energetic level. It's beyond just the physical body. So it's beyond culture, the skin of the avocado, what we see. It's beyond demographics, which is going to be things like age, religion, sexual orientation. It's going to be beyond anything that is in the physical realm. So at this core level, the attitudes that we have becomes an energy. That energy, of course, can and does manifest in our physical body. So, from a communication standpoint, it manifests in our facial expressions. You can often tell my emotion through my facial expression. It manifests in the energy of our voice. This is an energy, the vibration of the vocal cords to produce the sound. So, what emotion can you hear in the voice? So this idea of attitudes, beliefs, and values is at an energy level. And this is the one that I personally loved because it helped explain to me why some of my most close relationships transcend culture and transcend demographics. Why can I connect with someone who is from a different country, a totally different culture, someone who is a different sex, different sexual orientation, different religion, different race, different age, different socioeconomic status? The answer becomes because somehow we've taken different cultural and demographic paths in life, but we have arrived at the same place in the center. So I use the old metaphor that all roads lead to Rome. So even though we've had different cultures and different demographics, we have somehow arrived at very similar attitudes, values, and beliefs. So the connection truly is at an inner energetic level because the attitudes, values, and beliefs, these are what trigger feelings and what become emotional responses. And the emotion is the energy. So when you can reduce something down, and reduce maybe isn't the best word because concentrate might be better. As a communication person, language matters. Reduce can sometimes feel like minimize it, and this is not anything to minimize. This is really important. Reducing, concentrating is a better word. This concentrates the importance that at the core of who people are, we are energy. This is a more metaphysical approach to things, and you can see past that. So when you try to answer the question, who are my people? Who are those most like me? Where do I belong? Many of us reach for what we can see and touch and taste and smell. We reach for the physical world, which means we immediately start naming people who are culturally similar to us and demographically similar. Certainly, we can be similar and often are similar, but I'm encouraging, and what I loved about this model is for you to think even deeper, that your people, those who you connect with at the most deep level can be any culture and they can be any demographic, because the deepest connection point is at that energy inner core, individual diversity. Feel free to drop in some questions and some thoughts. I know that was for some of you who don't study about metaphysics, that could be a little bit new agey thinking. What are your thoughts about that? What are your questions about that? As you think about questions or thoughts, I'm going to look through my notes real quick, make sure I didn't miss any of the major things that I wanted to talk about. Let me look through. We feel. Why is this important? This is what I'm going to backtrack. The 3 layers of diversity are important because, yes, it allows you to better understand yourself, allows you to make conscious, strategic choices, move towards the goals, what I mentioned in the beginning. But ultimately, when we know differently, we feel differently about something. It's a different play on the quote that I love by Dr. Maya Angelou: know better, do better. The play on it is, when we know differently, we feel differently. And when we feel differently, then we do differently. So by introducing this model and this idea of individual diversity, and the people who are most like you may actually look very different than you and act very different than you from a cultural perspective. But the people who are most similar at the individual level, introducing that idea may mean that you feel differently about who are the people that you connect with or could connect with. And therefore, it'll change what you do. You may be more open to people who, again, look different, sound different because they speak different languages, or they speak with an accent on the language that you speak. It'll change potentially the people that you interact with, which will continue to expand your new experiences, expand your world out. Your thoughts? Any thoughts, any questions on this idea of 3 layers? One thought that I often use when I'm teaching is 3 enough? Because there are many models of diversity, and some of them have more than 3. Some have 4, 5, 6 different aspects of it. One that this model doesn't talk about is organizational culture, and that certainly does exist. Cultures can have very strong organizations can have very strong cultures. Does anyone see any other potential ideas for layers that can be on there? Wait in the chat in just a moment. And I see that we've had people from all over Germany, Israel, India, the UK, Hong Kong, Atlanta, London, to people from all over. That means we're going to have very different cultural differences here in the style of what we expect from learning, in the style of communication, in our thoughts about what diversity is. I'll wait just another moment. We're at the 20-minute mark, so that allows us to conclude. Oh, hey, hi, Mustafa. Nice to see you. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions. Let me go ahead and wrap up. What did we talk about today for those that are just joining? We introduced a model that I've been teaching for over a decade now at several universities on 3 layers of diversity. I call it the avocado model because the outer layer is like the skin. It is the cultural diversity. If we go to the grocery store and we see an avocado, we'll often judge that avocado. If you want to make guacamole, you're going to judge that avocado just by looking at it. And you're going to say it's too ripe or it's not ripe enough. That avocado doesn't look right for guacamole. So you may not even approach and interact with that avocado. Oop, hold on. Sorry about that. There's an alert on the phone. The next layer is going to be demographic diversity. And the demographic diversity was different life experiences put us into categories, and marketers love demographic diversity. So we can have similar life experiences with people who are, for example, the same age, but don't be limited by those thoughts because those life experiences aren't the core of who we are. So that would be the guacamole layer, the flesh of the avocado. The inner layer is going to be the pit, the core, the nucleus. This individual layer are things like values, attitudes, beliefs. And when we get to that layer, when we know our attitudes, values, and beliefs, then that's how we can really connect at the most fundamental level because it's at an energetic level beyond just the physical. Okay, I see a comment from Hilla. Interested in knowing how to create a single language within multiple cultures. Oh, okay. So this is interesting. Hilla, are you talking about verbal language or are you talking about nonverbal language? The reason I ask is they are, of course, related and interconnected, but there is evidence that verbal comes from the left hemisphere and nonverbal from the right hemisphere, and they often work in unison. And there are certainly some gestures on verbal that are exclusive to cultures, but there are also there's research about universal expressions, so facial expressions, which is nonverbal. That doesn't matter which culture you're from. Written. Okay, interesting. A single language from multiple cultures. There are some that have already existed. There are pigeons that have come in, for example, in New Orleans. So this was historically a trading port with languages from people coming in from all over the world. So they established a common trading language. It's not a main language, but it's a common language that people can use to trade. Pigeons happen. So if you want this common language, Hilla, pigeons happen over prolonged contact. If you just meet people for the first time with different languages and multiple cultures, you probably won't be able to establish a pigeon real quick. But if you're trading on a regular basis, it's going to be pretty clear that you need a common language. For written language, I think a good way to start would be with some not actual words, but with signs and symbols. But even that can still be culturally relevant, that not every sign means the same thing. And if we've driven in other parts of the world, or at least been on the road in other parts of the world, we know that not every road sign means the same thing. And some cultures have road signs that are totally different, that I have no idea what that symbol means. I've never seen that before. But in short answer, Hilla, is that it is possible. It's called a pigeon when these cultures from different languages come together and interact for purposes such as trading. They will develop a trade language. It's not spoken at home, but it's one that is taught for the purpose of trading. Interestingly enough, this is related to your question, not necessarily a topic of diversity, but over the course of time, if pigeons are used over and over, they can develop into creoles, where creole is a combination of a bunch of languages, but it is an actual language that becomes a mother tongue and is taught to future generations. But if it's just done for the purpose of trading, then it's just written, or rather, it's just a pigeon. Good question. Resources. Again, I'm going to share the full video for you. It's a free video that's on YouTube that I created that's going to go over in depth about these three. I encourage you to watch that. Feel free to make comments. Feel free to share that with your colleagues, with your students on YouTube or social media if you find that helpful. I talked about connecting on an individual level with individual diversity. That is something that you're going to need to know your values on. So once you become conscious of your values, it's going to be really helpful for you to know that, because then you can see it in yourself, and that way you'll be able to spot it more quickly in other people and then get to know them faster. And you'll likely find that those are your kind of people, regardless of what their cultural demographics are, because you vibrate at the same core value level. I have a worksheet exercise that's free on my website, rightbrainjourneys.com, that allows you to discover your core values. It's usually about a 20-minute exercise to complete. It's under the resources section, and I'll share that link as well in the replay of this video. So encourage you to do that. This is what we're going to end with. I would love to work with you. So if there are additional questions, feel free to connect with me if you're not already connected with me. I do these a couple times a month. The next one, this is going to be a busy end of April for me, so I will do the next LinkedIn Live in May. Haven't set the date for that yet, but look, within the next week or so, I'll be publishing the next one, and I'll invite from my usual list of people who have joined from this meeting and past meetings. So look for that on my LinkedIn page. Also encourage you to visit rightbrainjourneys.com, my website, where I post a lot of free resources and additional information. I have a monthly LinkedIn newsletter. If you haven't subscribed to that yet, it's based on conscious communication. And it's talked in the past of things like, how do you build confidence when you're communicating? We've looked at the power of language, so topics such as this. I also have a book on Amazon, From Student to Professional. It's how do you transfer public speaking soft skills from the classroom to the workplace, which can be a helpful guide. I also do one-on-one coaching and organizational workshops. So if you work for an organization and would like me to help with public speaking, both virtual and in person, if you're in the New York City area, I'm happy to do that as well. Thank you, Chi-Chi. Appreciate it. Thank you, Hilla. Thank you, Mustafa and Gabby and everyone. Sherry, Akil, Dragon. Nice to meet you, Kieran. Glad to have all of you join today. Thank you very much. See you on the next one. Have a great day. Bye-bye.